We all talk at once.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers. It is Thursday, March 3rd. We're recording a day early because we want to be able to go to the big Women's Political Committee luncheon on Friday. A lot of news, a lot of moving parts, a lot of breaking news, lots to talk about. Quickly on COVID, all the news remains good. Kids are allowed to take their mask off. The sheriff says that they've cleared all the cases in the jail, big decrease in cases, positivity rate below 5%. So I will not spoil all the good news with my paranoid anxiety that there are other variants lurking out there and this is not over yet. You heard it here first. We would be remiss not to talk about Ukraine as the world stands on the brink of World War III. There was an impressive gathering of hundreds of people in Santa Barbara this week. Josh and Nick, you both covered that. What was your takeaway?
I got into a photo in the Independent, if you can believe that. I'm very excited.
Can't believe that we let that slide.
I can't believe it either.
Fired.
That's the closest you'll ever become to being in the pages of the Independent.
Apparently you had very thin staffing that day, Nick, so I couldn't be censored.
All right, anyway, talk about who is Cristo Artuzio? Is that the person?
Yeah,
kind of
you
in
know,
the
I mean,
center.
it was Cristo Artuzio is a really impressive character. He grew up in Santa Barbara. He is a good childhood friend of Doss Williams, and his stepmother is Mary Rose, who is the campaign consultant for many Democrats in town. And he is married to a Ukrainian woman, Titania, and her father is in parliament there in Ukraine. So there was a lot of connections. They were supposed to fly back home on March 6th, where they live in Ukraine. They are business people there now. And guess what? Their travel plans were hijacked by the invasion and the attack. So
an impressive turnout, though.
about, I don't know, 600-700 people on a noon on Monday. And it was somber and celebratory at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, this story has just got everybody in the world, I think. I mean, Switzerland decided not to be neutral on this one. So, I mean, it's extraordinary. And Josh, I won't try to figure out why you had 350 people and Nick had 700, but that's the nature of crowd counts. But
who's correct?
Honestly, I don't think there were 700 people there. There were probably about between 400 to 500. It's probably
all right. Let's
where'd you get your number, Nick? Did you make it up?
Scientific. We used some drone counting algorithms.
Hey,
So
Nick,
we both made it up.
Nick, did you get your numbers from Trump?
We'll cut the baby in half. Cut the baby in half and say it was 525. But anyway, Josh, you focused on District Attorney Joyce Dudley, who has a very personal connection to it, and I guess gave a very emotional speech.
Yeah, it was very touching. She spoke about her grandfather and how her great-grandmother put him on a boat at 13 to come to the United States. No money, not speaking a word of English, but to avoid the situation that was happening then is very similar to now. And he arrived and he made something of himself. He offered to push a vending cart for someone else who had a business overnight, and he made something like a penny a week, and he saved it up, and then he learned how to sew. And over time, he was able to save and purchase some property. But Joyce Dudley was just very powerful to watch her when she spoke. She fought back tears. It was very real to her. It was very emotional. So that was the highlight of it for me, as a journalist, in terms of I made that the lead. That was the most compelling. But there were also lots of good speakers. There were a lot of people there. I mean, we saw members of City Council, obviously Supervisor Doss Williams, a lot of
Yeah,
people.
if you're still advising him, tell him he shouldn't be putting on a huge smile in the pictures when people are being mass murdered in Ukraine. But that's just an optical observation. And Nick, you used the word verklempt to describe Joyce. What is that?
When you get
Verklempt?
choked up, you get choked up and you're fighting back tears and you're getting emotional. And she did get verklempt.
All right. And she
It's
also,
Jerry, it's a Yiddish word.
well, what does it, what's your?
It means you're a mess. It mean I'm a bissel verklempt. It means you're a little discombobulated,
All
right? Yeah.
Very nice usage. Points for that, Nick. And then she also got emotional because she announced this week or today, this very day, that she's not running for re-election. Part of it personal. She's 69 and she wants to do other things with her life, and part of it political and professional. She's really unhappy, I think, with some of the supervisors and the some of the direction. She gave me a quote that I think is kind of scary about, that crime victims are no longer the focus of the criminal justice system in Santa Barbara. She said it's all about the defendant. And she endorsed her assistant, John Savernock. What do we know about him?
Well, he came, I don't know, I want to say 7-10 years ago from Fresno. And when he was brought in, there were some grumbling within the department. Why are they bringing in talent from Fresno? Clearly, he was being groomed for a high administrative role. He's been a real steady Eddie in the department. He's not well known. I've never seen him try a case myself. I think he's an administrative, he's a steady hand and helps keep that place running.
Yeah,
So,
he's an old white male is what he is, which is, the timing of that is interesting, but there's only 2 weeks. They'll add on an extra 5 days where you can register to run, but still only 2 weeks. I don't think anybody else is running that I know of. So that's got to make him a prohibitive front runner.
well, that was a neat trick there that Joyce did, because everybody thought she was going to run again. And she did not disabuse people of that notion. And it was sort of wait to the last minute and step out of bounds and let your understudy take over the role.
Yeah.
Very clever.
Yeah, and Mary Rose, I think, has something to do
Yeah.
with that, the aforementioned Mary Rose. Yeah.
Have we checked in with Jonathan Abood to see if he's running?
Oh, no, wait a minute. Jonathan is definitely, that's a good question. He could run for D. I don't know. All right. Any other quick observations on the Dudley district attorney matter? I have a Charlie Rose length interview with her posted on the Newsmakers site now.
I just think, it's very easy to, get upset about some of the woke language and attitudes. But I do think it's important to keep in mind that, we've had 30 years, 35 years of lock them up and throw away the key politics in California. And a lot of people, the federal government basically had to intervene and say, California, you have way too many people in your jails. You got to do something about it. It was a court-ordered thing by the, federal courts that we had done that. And so I know that in your interview, Joyce has expressed, concern about the rhetoric and, the pandering as if that's a crime amongst politicians. But I think that underneath the tone that you may not like, there is a reality of, are we locking up too many people for the wrong reasons? I know there are other things that we should be doing with a lot of those people than putting them in jail. And that I was sad to see not addressed more vigorously in your scoop there. But
Well,
Jerry-
here's the, go ahead. Gwyn, were you going to say something? I'm
Well, I
sorry.
was just gonna say, this isn't about whether more money should go to the police or less money should go to the police. But I do find it interesting, Jerry, as we were talking about before everyone came on, that, I mean, really the problem is how much focus and how much attention is spent on child welfare and early childhood education and investing in, young people. And this to me is the problem, that, that's the problem. If you take care, especially in Santa Barbara, there are about 500, for example, in the foster care system. There are somewhere between 400 and 500 foster youth. Unlike LA, where there's like 36,000, right? It's like such a hard problem to fix. Whereas in Santa Barbara, you really could make sure none of these kids fell through the cracks. You could have a mentor for every one of these kids. You could, but there's never, people care more about stray cats.
Well, and it becomes an either or situation. And Nick, we could have a whole show on this, but here's my thought. Greg and Das and the people that are pushing this stuff that Joyce called woke, this is an ideology. This is based on ideas and principles and values, which is all fine. Her position is based on real life, lived experience, contextual incidents. And that's the difference. And that's why crime has now risen to the top of every public opinion poll about the concern that people have. And there's going to be a big wave, I expect, in November.
Crime has always been, as it's one of those perennials, and it is, for people who like to pander, crime is the preeminent issue. And people have been pandering to crime. Oh, I'm for the death penalty and my opponent isn't. And
but it's real. I mean, it
is real. But Jerry, if you look at who's in jail and if you look at who's being prosecuted, you have to ask yourself, if you look at the number of homeless people who have been jailed, like 50, I know Steve Price, we've all written about him. He's been in jail 52 times. He has been sent various places. It is a waste of our resources to try to solve his problems through the criminal justice system.
Yeah. All right.
Jerry, I don't want to disagree with you too much, but I agree with you. You are correct in your analysis, but the conversation, when we talk about reimagining law enforcement, it means literally looking at all of this from a new lens and a new perspective. And the lens that you cited is a real one for a lot of people, but we're talking about changing that lens. And that lens says, who are the people who are in jail? Who are the people that are committing the crimes? Who are the victims of the crimes? And how do we figure out a way to reach them earlier on in the process? Because the bottom line, Jerry, is, and forgive me if I'm wrong, you're probably not going to be a victim of this rising crime that you're talking about. You're probably not. Who is?
Well, you would have to leave your home.
People.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right, we got to leave this here. Let me bring in Melinda, doing the Lord's work. And once again, Melinda, you've I don't know what we would do without you in this community. Reported on the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday, where yet another deal was given to the growers over the objections of the many people in the community. What happened?
Well, there were two big important hearings on the agenda about cannabis, and one of them had to do with, it was a 4-to-1 vote with the chair, Joan Hartman, opposed, to remove processing buildings where cannabis is dried and cured and trimmed, remove those buildings from the acreage cap for cultivation. So that leaves more space to grow cannabis and more opportunity for growers to come in separately with permits for processing buildings. Right now, a lot of growers are taking their product out of the county, even as far away as San Bernardino or Lake County, to be processed. that means this county doesn't get the tax revenue. They have to truck their product miles away. So they pitched the board on this, and they got it.
And the processing is, if I'm correct, the most pungent part of the process, is it not?
It is.
And
other big item on the agenda was a state-of-the-art processing building for the Carpinteria Valley on Foothill
Smiling
Road.
Graham Farrar. Yeah.
Graham Farrar has two cannabis cultivation sites. One of them's on Foothill. Both of them happen to be sort of a focus of community complaints about the smell of pot.
Which is a false narrative, according to Supervisor Williams. Is that not correct?
I think that
Those were the words he used.
those were the words. Graham's project was at the board on appeal. So a resident of Carpinteria who lives on La Mirada Drive, which is just above Foothill, the winds blow the smell up there. She and a lot of members of Concerned Carpinterian have opposed this project because they don't think that it's fair for the county to approve an expansion of a cannabis operation that has been such a problem for the smell of cannabis. And it really pointed to, the hearing is very interesting, kind of got to the crux of the matter. So here you have a state-of-the-art building with air curtains, negative pressure at the doors so that when you open the door, the air comes out, it doesn't go in. And you have carbon scrubbers inside the building, scrubbing out the smell. And it's a very high-tech, it's exactly what you want for processing. If you're going to have a 25,000 square foot building, that's how you should design it for drying, trimming, and curing. And Graham said he's been doing it in an old pack house, flower pack house. A lot of these flower concerns have switched to cannabis over on Casitas Pass Road. So he's going to do all of that now on this property on Foothill inside this sealed building within a building. So the supervisors were very complimentary, and they said it was a historic day and something to celebrate. But then here are the citizens saying, no, this is wrong. Normally, if an applicant comes in with violations, that applicant can't be approved for another project. But in this case, it's been 3 or 4 years now, several hundred complaints. The county goes out, it inspects, but it can't figure out where the smell is coming from because there's other cannabis operations in the area. And first they said, oh, well, you have to get your permit and then we'll be able to enforce this. But they couldn't enforce it then either because the other operations didn't have permits. And of course, everyone has been allowed to grow without permits now going on more than 4 years, as long as they had their applications in. And people in the community have said that they've been suffering a whole range of health problems.
And we know now that, I mean, not to be cynical, but that's, there's a 3-2 at least rubber stamp or 4-1 for anything that the industry wants now. My question. Wait 1 second. So Greg Hart, who's part of the In the Pocket group, is going off to be in the state assembly. Laura Capps is so far unopposed. Is that going to make any difference? Is she going to raise this issue? Gwyn, what do you think?
I hope so. I
That's
hope she
it?
does. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't think anyone has
You talk to her a lot, though. I mean, what's your sense of how aggressive she'll be?
I trust that Laura will do the right thing. I think Laura's heart is in the right place. I think Laura wants to understand you know, what the real issues are and try to find some way to, you know, problem solve that. I don't think there's been nearly enough energy put into trying to find solutions. And I think that for the supervisors, any of them, to say it's a false argument or I mean, why would these homeowners be wasting their time with this if they didn't smell cannabis constantly? It's like, obviously it's affecting their lives. It's affecting the value of their property. It's affecting their ability to sell their homes. They don't want to sell their homes. It's where they live. And so they're, you know, so I don't understand. I mean, talk about victim shaming, you know, so I just hope that, I hope Laura will, you know, really do something about creating a process so that people could feel heard and that there can be some attempt at rectifying this problem, because it really does impact these people's lives. I understand the money,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Nick,
appeal.
I'm sorry
but-
I interrupted you. What were you gonna say?
Oh, I just, I think to your point there about Laura, I think she will team up with Joan Hartman and on occasion some of the Bob Nelson to ask tougher questions and press the issue harder. I do think, you know, with Graham Farrar's, you know, he is doing what everybody says they wanted to have been done at the beginning, or he's proposing that with this facility. And unfortunately, you know, where the county has really dropped the ball is, according to Melinda, they have the technology to determine where the odors are originating from, but haven't used it yet. Because if I remember what you told me, Melinda, they haven't really said, okay, of all these 250 complaints, this one we can tie definitively to Graham's doorsteps as opposed to his next door neighbors. But I do think that this processing plant that, you know, he's proposing is going to keep a lot of the odors that are now seeping out under control.
All right, we'll see.
Processing is the easy part in a way, because it can be in a sealed building, but
Right.
Open vented greenhouses is a much more difficult.
And they've added, what, 3 more acres now eligible for that?
For carpentry, it's more like 9 more,
9 more acres, okay. All right.
3 more up north.
All right, hey, Josh, your piece on the Chick-fil-A nuisance controversy. Everybody knows who drives that way on State Street, that the line backs up from Chick-fil-A, interferes with, and it seems like the city has just thrown up their hands and said, you figure it out, or we're going to shut you down. What's this? What is a possible solution to this?
Well, Chick-fil-A has already implemented a whole bunch of solutions. I think that the line that we see pictures of are file photos, and I think that a lot of what the city presented, that data, was data from the height of the pandemic when people were not comfortable eating inside. Chick-fil-A has finally gotten the message, and they have 2 lanes. They've hired security guards to instruct people to be out there on the sidewalk and say, don't turn in here. They work people really efficiently. If you've ever been to In-N-Out, Jerry, which I don't know if you have.
I once or twice.
It's kind of like that, but double. They have twice as many people. Essentially, there's some people who complain that the city needs to stop Chick-fil-A because they can't ride their bikes on State Street because the cars queue up and they back out in front of Rusty's all the way to the car wash, maybe even to the corner there. And they want the city to stop this. So the city's kind of in a quandary because you have a successful business. They're trying to recruit, they're trying to retain, they're trying to be pro-business. They get like 2,500 people a day at Chick-fil-A, and they're successful and people like it. It's a novelty. There's nothing else like
What
it.
could the city do? What are the options?
The city's options are to basically say you need to stop this queuing out, or we're going to revoke your legal non-conforming status to have a drive-through, because it is currently not legal for new drive-throughs to be permitted. But if you had one from way back and they had one previously from Burger King, then you can have it. But as soon as we mess with your conditions, you have to stop it. So that's the direction the city would like to go. And there are some people in the public who want the city to go that way. Chick-fil-A says, hey, we're doing all of this stuff. This problem has been addressed. You didn't even notice us. The property owner was saying we never got a notice until February that, we're the ones who own the land. Chick-fil-A is just the business in there. And so there were some noticing issues. So they're going to give them 90 days to work on this issue. If they can't resolve it, then the city will initiate nuisance findings, which will trigger another step of them having to fix their problem. And ultimately they could lose it. But I don't think they're going to lose it. There's an undercurrent here that it is Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A is a restaurant where the corporate ownership was known to give money against same-sex marriage. And I believe that that's an undercurrent for why they are such a target. There are people who've been wanting to get Chick-fil-A out of this community from day one. It has not come up. They will get sued if it comes up. But to hear on one hand, council members saying we need to promote businesses and do what we can to recruit and retain them, and then say Chick-fil-A doesn't belong in that spot anymore, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
It sounds to me like you have drunk the Kool-Aid and eaten the Chick-fil-A, and you're a happy customer. As somebody who has ridden that stretch, no, I haven't gotten in a car crash yet, but I've had a couple of near misses, and it's been a nuisance. And I can tell you, Chick-fil-A can say we never got noticed, but I've talked with Rob Dayton, the former city traffic engineer in the past. He said, we have been working with them and working with them and working with them. So if they're saying we didn't know anything about it, I frankly don't believe them.
They're not saying that, and I don't know that Rob Dayton is going to be the authority that's going to change my mind on traffic data in this situation. I agree, Nick. It's tough to ride your bike there.
No, it's not a bike, it's the cars. And if you look at the number of car accidents that have happened, it is a significant nuisance. And it's good for them that they're so successful, and it's great they have a chicken sandwich that people like. But the reality is, what do we hear all the time? The streets should not be privatized. The streets have become privatized, and they become a significant traffic hazard.
So Gwyn, your kids love Chick-fil-A. You told me why? What's so great about it? I've never had it because I don't.
Honestly, I have no interest in eating Chick-fil-A. I don't love chicken. And I don't love chicken that have been raised on hormones, especially. So I can't really talk about that. My kids love it. That's all I can say. They have no problem with same-sex marriage, but they do love Chick-fil-A.
All right. Okay.
But they also love In-N-Out Burger, even more.
All right. So Nick, you've been on a roll with all kinds of enterprise thing. Your piece on the police review commission process, I recommend to people. As well as your poodle on the number of vacant housing units there are in the city. But I wanted to ask you about the B-cycle situation and what's going on with that. That was going to be the great savior of things at one point, but you seem to have turned on it now.
It's funny you say that. I got a letter from the representative from B-Cycle saying that my article was biased and negative. I don't really see it that way, but there was a report that basically said this goose is half cooked. We're not sure how well it's going to taste, but right now it's looking pretty good. Right now they've had more trips generated by this particular outfit than they have in 46 other cities where they do business. It could do better. It can still reach out to more neighborhoods. The problems have been sort of hiccups mostly. There's only been 3 accidents out of 81,000 trips that have been serious. 2 of them went to college, none life-threatening.
But how many accidents are there just in bikes in general?
I don't have that number at the tip of my head, but
I mean,
3 out of 81,000
right,
is not
right.
bad.
81,000 rides.
You personally, Nick, have had about 81,000, is
I've
that?
had about 81,000 accidents, yes.
So, go ahead, Gwyn, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, but your piece on it did seem like it did seem like you weren't a big supporter of it. So what you're
But I
saying,
was, I think part of it is everybody knows I'm a real knee-jerk pro-bike guy. And this is basically a news report on the evaluation of where we are so far. And what they said is we're halfway there. So it's hard to say.
All right. And then Gwyn, on the show last week, we talked about this awful incident at Santa Barbara Junior High where a kid got beat up and called the N-word, and then some of his scholarly friends reenacted the George Floyd murder on him. And you followed up on it and really drilled down on it. You have a Q&A with Hilda Maldonado, the superintendent, and you brought in a couple of other people to talk about what was going on. What's your takeaway? I recommend the package to people. It's in your paper this week, just out. What was your takeaway about all of it?
well, I mean, I wanted to talk to Hilda because I wanted to go right to the source and not get the
Not-
company line.
Not talk to your former editor, yes.
Sure.
No problem talking to my former editor, but I'd rather talk directly to the source. And what's my takeaway? My takeaway, both from my interview and from having been on a school board, is these kinds of things are very tough to talk about because a lot of stuff they can't talk about. And, I don't know. I don't even know exactly. I heard that there was a 3-day suspension for these kids. But the group I brought together, so it was Hilda, it was Wendy Sims Moten, school board member. It was Guy Walker, who chairs the Endowment for Youth Committee. And it was Kalyan Balavan, who's the headmaster of Dunn, who started the Inclusion Lab in Santa Barbara. And so, I wanted really to talk about the bigger picture, which is what is being done. And, listen, my takeaway was, I think, I say it in the piece. I think they are genuinely taking it seriously. I think they genuinely care deeply about this issue. Do I think enough has been done since they had a resolution 2 years ago and said that they were going to train teachers in anti-bias training and all
Right,
that?
which when that jumped out at me in your piece, that hasn't happened.
It hasn't happened. And I just, when I sort of said to Hilda, I said, well, what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan? And she said, well, it's not really fair to ask me for a 3-point plan. This just happened. We have to really come up with a thoughtful approach going forward and all of that. But, I think this is just, I opened my piece by saying something Tim Buckley said to me when we started working together. And he said, you might not believe this, but everything that happens everywhere in the world happens here, and it's true, and it's like, this is a horrible, expression of what's going on, but it's not unique. And, we can't just react to these things. We can't just have these conversations when a crisis happens. When George Floyd gets murdered or a kid gets tackled to the ground and called George Floyd and the N-word and a monkey, I think they called him.
Yeah.
So it's pretty awful. I think being a superintendent is a little bit like playing whack-a-mole. It's like, especially during the pandemic, there's always something going on and it's very, very hard, but I think this has to be a priority.
All right. Well, good stuff. Very substantive package that you presented on that. And then Josh, real quick, uh, the famous achievement gap, the school district made a change in how students will be in class vis-a-vis honors and college prep. I didn't, anytime Sean Carey's in the middle of it, my head starts to hurt in trying to follow the through line on the thing. But what's the bottom line on that?
So the district has decided to, if you're going into 9th grade or 10th grade, to put college prep students in the same room with honor students. So honor students are students who exceed grade level. College prep are students who are at grade level or below. And typically in the past, they would be in different classrooms. And that really sets off sort of a path for them. So one of the ways to address equity and inclusion is saying, let's get rid of that and let's put them in the same classroom and let's have the teachers assess who deserves honors credit and who doesn't. Now, you could say, well, if they belonged in the honors classes, they would be there. But that's not necessarily true, the educators say, because there's systematic barriers, right? Like we all know, and some of us may be those parents where we're going to make sure our kid is in the best class they can be. Well, that's a privilege that some people have. There are some kids whose parents aren't going to do that. And so they're not going to be put in those honors classes. However, they are just as capable, or they can be just as capable with the right teacher who can reach them. So the district is sort of saying, hey, let's forget about that. They still have an internal roster and know what this person signed up for, but they're going to offer differentiated instruction to kind of help them. And that's the plan. It's going to start. They've been doing it in a pilot, 9th grade at a couple of those high schools. They're going to do it at all of them. And then they're going to start it in 7th grade. And their whole thing is like in elementary school, they're all in the same classroom. And then all of a sudden they get to 7th grade and we start doing this. And why do we expect that there's not going to be an achievement gap when we treat them differently and we have lower, or not lower, but we have different expectations of some students based off of some assessment that they did heading into 7th grade. So that's what they're doing. I've gotten some emails, of course, from people who are like, oh, this is the district and they're going to hurt those honor students. They're not going to get the time and the attention that they need. That's been, most of the
no, if
feedback
in my imagination, I'm looking at a thought bubble from James Finkner's sizable head that says, oh, you're just appealing to the lowest common denominator.
Well, Finkner didn't email me, but we haven't talked in a long time. So.
I think, Josh, I think these are false dichotomies that are always brought up. If you're somehow supporting these students, you're hurting these students, and it's not necessarily true. And I think, honestly, Jerry, I think every subject we've talked about today on your show, I would say the same thing. I would say someone needs to take a holistic look at this. And I just think every one of these issues are dealt with in these silos, but it doesn't.
I will say Virginia Alvarez, by the way, is one who's not necessarily in favor of this. She has concerns about the data and who's it going to help and who's it going to hurt. So, it is, I would say, as somebody, and I'll stop in a second, who grew up in the public school system, as a Mexican-American student, I was entirely ignored by every one of the teachers I've ever had. I was an introvert. I never talked. I was quiet. All the other white kids got all the attention and nothing to do with my intelligence. I never took the SAT. No one ever asked me to take the SAT. And when I got done with high school, I went to Santa Barbara City College. And fortunately, I found a teacher there who helped me and turned things around. Not everybody is that fortunate. So there are implicit biases, and I know that they exist. Now, am I as smart as Nick Welsh? Probably not, but Nick Welsh is a genius.
Now there's our lead.
In the same room with him.
There's our lead, Josh Molina, introvert. Okay, we got it. Yeah.
I think the lead,
Melinda,
I think the lead is Nick Welsh, genius. I don't think it's Josh Molina, introvert.
I like Josh the introvert. Yeah.
All right, Melinda, what's next on your radar?
Well, I am going to look at a story on what exists right now. The technology does exist to determine where a smell of pot is coming from, which grow it is coming from. But It means, a big network of monitoring in the valley. It means meteorological stations, which are pretty much already up. And it means spending some money. So we'll see.
All right, Josh, you got Scott Hadley, our old friend, who actually went on to make money and got out of the journalism business, on the podcast. Who's you going to have Joyce Dudley on? Or have
I'm not booked my
I
next-
just salted the earth on that, I guess.
I can't follow that, Jerry. There's nothing that I can do. So I'm going to have to figure something out. No, I had Scott Hadley this week. Great conversation. Talk about geniuses. He's in that group. And we just relived the David Adias story that we talked about. And it's just fun to talk about those old journalism days, as you know. And all my journalism buddies like loved it, came out of the woodwork and thought it was a really good conversation. So I have not booked my next guest, Jerry, but as for the show, I'll get on that.
All right, Nick, I suppose you'll be going to the film festival all week, huh? It's
Yeah, that's all I do.
but a good piece on the police commission and that issue of whether or not they're going to allow some representation for law enforcement, I think is really critical. And you're absolutely right that they're not going to get 4 votes on the council if they don't address that. And
I like your Jackson analogy, Judge.
what's that?
I liked his Justice Jackson analogy.
Yeah. What's your cover this week, Gwen?
It's about the Montecito, Hands Across Montecito, helping the homeless situation here, and then we have
Oh,
Hilda down at the bottom, and Cold Springs School, of course. Never a dull moment at Cold Springs, and then the Hot Springs story.
And you'll be able to read that online in 6 months or so, thanks to their fine website, which I continually complain about. All right, well,
Hey, Jerry, it's funny.
Gwyn Lurie, Nick Welsh, Josh Molina, and Melinda Burns, thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.